you travel for work and you feel like controlling your calories whilst you're constantly eating out in restaurants, airports, and hotels is impossible, then this video is what you need to hear. I'm going to show you exactly how I teach my clients to manage their calories while they travel without needing every meal to be perfect. I'm going to break it down into the different levels that we use, from simple portion control all the way through to accurately tracking your calories and protein whilst you're away. So whether you're just starting or maybe you've already lost weight and you're struggling to manage things and sustain things whilst you're away, you'll know exactly what you need to focus on next. The first thing we have to do, the first thing we have to get right, be aware of, and possibly change is shifting our mindset. It's so important to be in the right state of mind, understand a little bit what we're going to get ourselves into, and understand that it's going to require some effort, right? And look, you have to be willing to put in more effort. You have to be okay with that being the case and fully ready and aware that that needs to be done. Because if you're going into this half-heartedly, you commit half-half, and you're not sure whether you see yourself doing this long term, you're just going to kind of see how it goes, it isn't going to work, right? And so we have to put in the effort now so that we reap the benefits for the rest of our life, right? The rest of our life as men who regularly find ourselves in difficult situations. Like, for example, and tracking our food and staying on top of our diet it requires a lot of effort, especially if you've never done it before, right? As an example, as you can see on the screen now, like Kevin, he's 62 years old. He lost 12 kilos of body fat, and he managed to get to grips with it. And it took a bit of time at the start. It took a month or a couple of months to really feel confident with it. But he stuck with it, and look at the results that he got. It's unbelievable. And the same with Simon, who's 60, and he's just hit the 21 kilo lost mark. And again, found it a bit tricky at the start, but he was wholeheartedly committed. And if he wasn't, he probably would have kind of given up and stopped trying during that first phase, right? So we have to understand that, to understand our calories, it means you will be able to maintain your weight, because that is the goal, right? If our goal is to just hit a number on the scale, we aren't going to do it properly, and we definitely won't be able to stay there when we get there, all right? Because we'll end up probably just resuming how we were eating before and hoping we stay where we are. And if you want to lose weight and put in less effort, you won't maintain it. It's as simple as that. And if you would like to diet once and never have to diet again, put in the extra effort, right? And I know you all have very demanding work schedules. You have a lot going on, but what's the alternative here? Put in a load of effort, slightly less effort, but put in a lot of effort in the gym especially and with activity, and then end up back at square one in a year's time, 2 years' time, and have to do it all again from a place where it's even more difficult. No, that sounds like a pretty crap alternative, right? So we have to be firstly ready and willing to accept that effort is required and commit wholeheartedly. And we have to remember that everyone's starting point is different. Yeah, everyone's starting point is different. And where you start from, your initial start point, the point where you've realized I need to make changes, like that's going to play an important role, because if you're the kind of person who prefers things to be black and white, you know exactly whether you followed it or not. Personally, school A-levels, I did physics and maths as opposed to English, history, because I like to just have a sum, a formula. You either get the answer or you don't, and it's a logical way to work through it instead of facts and theories and psychologies and these kind of things, right? So if you're that kind of person, then it might dictate how you track your calories, how you stay in control. You might be better suited to one particular way of doing it over another. And we have to consider when you dive, whether you dive head first into it, and go straight with the more accurate, more time intensive, and slightly more difficult at the start to get our head around anyway, method, or whether we just dip our toe in first and we just put some simple rules in place, some simple portion control rules, and start with a easier, more gradual change from what we're currently doing, which is probably not a lot, right? But ultimately, whether we dive in head first or whether we dip our toe in, we have to commit to getting in the pool, into the sea, whatever it is. We have to commit to it. And regardless, you're still committing to getting in, okay? So I'm going to go into basically broken it down into level 1 and level 2, but level 1 has got an A and a B. It's got 2 parts to it, which you would likely progress through if you start with level 1 of calorie control, so level 1A is really kind of just basic, simple portion control, okay? We're not trying to figure out numbers. We're not trying to hit targets. We are simply just trying to manage our portion sizes and keep consistent, right? And ultimately to get a better understanding of what better choices look like, what better food choices look like. So we're not necessarily worrying about exactly the volumes of them, but it's like, what foods should I pick or would be better to pick at the hotel breakfast buffet? Like, what is going to help me stay fuller? It's going to help me hit my protein or eat more protein because of the benefits that will come along with that, and help us kind of control our calories and not go overboard, right? And so it's all about implementing some really positive nutritional changes, changing what some options we would previously go for to some better ones. So we basically want to set a couple of rules, guidelines, whatever you want to call it, to keep us in and around the right place, and the energy we can focus on just kind of getting a better understanding of how different foods or making slightly different choices, controlling our portions a little bit better, affect our energy, our performance in the gym and at work, our appetite, how it will affect kind of how hungry we are throughout the day, in the evening, and ultimately our physique, because we will make changes, right? We will start to see physique improvements, weight loss, and if we get into a good strength routine, then some muscle building as well. And this level is really ideal for guys who have got a bit more weight to lose, right? If you're kind of fine-tuning things, you just want to get really lean and you're already like in a decent spot, it's not something I would recommend. And it's also really good for guys who are away from home a lot, right? And diving straight into trying to track and stay on top of numbers a bit more might just be way too daunting right now with the schedule that they have. And that's fine, right? And ultimately, like, as long as we are progressing and aiming, by aiming for consistency here, like, as long as we're progressing, it's fine. And as I said, like, a big part of the weight loss at this level is managing consistency with our food volume, and also to see some initial progress, because we're probably going to be eating naturally less calories than where we were before by making these better choices, by limiting our portion sizes. And I'm not talking about like tiny little plates of food, but like healthy full plates of food, but like with a limit, just one, and putting some hard and fast black and white limits on that. And we're just aiming for consistency, right? And then we can use things like activity, steps, some low intensity additional cardio at the end of your gym session, but also the gym stuff itself. And that those things that we can have a bit more control over, we can be a bit more accurate. Again, it's a bit more black and white. We hit X number of steps. We do X minutes of cardio. That combination at the start of the process, or if you've got lots of weight to lose, can be really, really, or help see some big results, right? As an example, we've got a number of the guys in the program who work in FIFO, and the canteen set up the kind of day mess, or I can't remember the term used to refer to like where you eat, but there's lots of options, right? And you can go overboard. But it might be a case of, right, at lunch or at dinner, that evening meal, one plate. I'm going to build out one plate. And on that one plate, I'm going to make sure that a big chunk of it is protein. Okay. We try and opt for the protein source that isn't, covered in sauce, or isn't as part of like a thick sauce. We make sure we try and get a lot of fiber on there. So fruit, veggies, salad. We try and pack that onto the plate, and we enjoy some carbs, and we just put together one plate, and we stick to that rule. We avoid dessert, we avoid like the buttered bread on the side, these kind of things, and making these simple choices by making sure we get a bit more protein on the plate than we would have previously, by putting a bit more fiber on the plate than we would have previously. Like, we're still going to feel as satisfied as full as if we didn't have that and we had some bread and butter on the side, if we had a dessert, and so we can see results like that. Or if you're somebody who regularly travels in hotels, stay in hotels all over Australia or all over the world, wherever it is, like, we can do the same at the hotel breakfast buffet. As an example, we can say, right, this bowl, I am going to, at the breakfast buffet, I'm going to be like, right, I fill it up with yogurt to this level. I do 1 tablespoon of the chia seeds, because that's going to give me a bit of extra fiber. I take my scoop of protein powder, but like, that bowl is the limit for breakfast. Yeah, it's just creating some boundaries where we'll know if if you go over, and it's hard to not be aware, because we're like creating this physical thing that we can see, right? And it has to, and as I said, like, activity is a big driver with this, because small changes with our diet are a bit more difficult, because we're not going by numbers, we're just going off kind of portion sizes, and so that's kind of level 1, and like the first part of level 1, the most basic thing where we can put stuff in place, right? And you can absolutely stay accountable to somebody with that by sending them a message or a picture when you have this meal, to show that you've only done the one plate, that it contains some protein, and these kind of things, right? And that's plays a big part in it as well. The second part to level 1 is essentially where it becomes, where like we have made progress, and you might progress to this if you've made progress, but maybe that progress has started to slow. Maybe we've hit a plateau, we've struggled to get the scale moving again for a couple of weeks now, and we're doing like a decent number of steps and activity, and maybe with our schedule, it's not really appropriate to try and increase that right now anyway. So it depends on the kind of person you are, right? Because you might go straight to this, but it's where to begin. It's another level of accountability. It helps you be more aware of what you're doing, because you've actually got to write it down, make a note of it, send it to somebody. Okay. And I've got lots of notes on my laptop. That's why I keep looking at it. I don't want to miss things. And so so it depends on the kind of person you are, and really it's another level of accountability, right? And so, like, we're not trying to get calories perfect. In level 1, we have to remember, like, we're not trying to get calories perfect, because even when we're tracking our calories and we're on to level 2 and trying to be a bit more accurate of things, it trying to be perfect is ultimately never going to be possible, and so we're setting ourselves up to fail from the beginning. And this is all about just displaying and proving to yourself that you can display a bit more discipline, a bit more control in situations where you have more food to your, like, at your fingertips. You can go overboard. Like, there's a very real possibility, and like, it's right there. There's nothing stopping you. No one's going to stop you going in and eating 2, 3, 4 plates of food, smashing the dessert. No one's going to stop you. So it's an element of like, right, I'm taking away a slight level of accuracy and additional thought, but I just want to prove to myself that I can remain disciplined, even in moments where maybe I'm with colleagues or with clients. I can stay on the course that I'm kind of trying to stay on, and prove to yourself that you can do that. Yeah. And prior to getting more detailed with it, and like, these levels are dictated by our progress ultimately, and we only ever need to change something or look at doing something a bit differently, looking at doing something with a bit more intent, with a bit more thought behind it, with a higher level of accuracy. We only ever need to change that if we aren't moving forward. And that could be moving forward in any way. That could be the scale obviously dropping. That could be looking different, our clothes feeling different, performance in the gym, even in the way we are mentally. Like, if we're progressing in some way, then like, this is what this is about. And we're not chasing like crazy fast results here. So let's have a look. We've been doing this within the program recently. Like, it's something we've kind of just started fairly recently, especially for guys who are away for like a long period of time, extended period of time, for like people on 6-week work trips, they're away for a full month, that kind of time period. It's really useful because it's extended period of time, and so we really want to remain in that moment, in that kind of mindset of like, I'm not just aiming for a portion. Like, I have to do this time and time again, and I have to feed it back to my coach, and I have to like stay a bit more kind of conscious and think about this consciously, right? How I react, and this strategy, when we introduce we call it the 1, 2, 3 strategy, is basically like, we will have moments where we might want to go a bit bigger on the portion size. Like, we might be out for a dinner with a client, and we might want to have a couple of drinks, and this helps us become more aware of that. And key is that we can react accordingly. We can make appropriate changes after a moment where maybe we went a bit overboard, right? And so essentially, we're scoring the meal as a 1, 2, or a 3. So we stick with 3 meals. For everybody who's using it at the moment, they aim for 3 meals a day, and every meal is either scored with a 1, 2, or a 3. And if it's a 2, that's kind of like that portion size we're aiming for, right? That moderate portion size. If it's a 3, it means we've gone a bit overboard. Okay, we've eaten more than what we would like to have aimed for whatever reason. And then obviously 1 is where we would rein things in a little bit. We try and prioritize mainly and predominantly protein and fiber in this meal, so we can still try and stay as satiated as we can for obviously a smaller portion size. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we want to be averaging 2. And at the end of the week, we want to be averaging 2. And if we are, or if it's higher or lower, then we know we have to maybe change the way we're doing things. We'll just look back and kind of determine why we made those decisions in those moments, and whether we could have done it slightly differently, or how could we think about it differently next time, or how could we set ourselves up knowing that we are planning to have a bigger meal in the evening, by having a meal class as number one earlier that day, something like that. So it helps us stay more aware. And a big part of it is, like, again, every meal needs to have protein and fiber. If we go under, we're trying to be a bit more conservative, that number one meal would need to be predominantly protein and fiber. And if we're at number three, likelihood is that maybe we didn't quite get enough protein and fiber, because we added in, likelihood is it's like extra carbs or alcohol, things like that, right? And when it comes to this, we have to be really careful that we don't skip meals, right? Where skipping meals is a tricky, and I've had numerous conversations with multiple clients about this, because it's like, if we have two number threes in a row, so I'll skip dinner and then I'm still averaging a 2, which is correct, and it's partly a way of doing it. But a big part of why people struggle with their weight, why guys struggle with their weight when they travel a lot and they are eating out a lot, is because portion control is tough, right? And having had hundreds of conversations with men in this situation, if you overeat and then you restrict, skip breakfast the next day, have a small lunch, and then you end up going overboard again, it's a vicious cycle that you don't want to get into. And to stop that cycle happening in the first place, the most important thing is that we practice some portion control and discipline at the first meal where it would have started the cycle. And so this method is all about adjusting portion sizes to keep that overall food volume where we want it, instead of, well, when I have my meals, I can go overboard, and then I'll just skip a meal and it will make up for it. If we do that, we're reinforcing that habit and that bad vicious cycle that we don't want to get into, because to be in the best position possible to be able to maintain your weight, your new healthy weight, when you get there, when you continue to live this lifestyle you're on, is by understanding how to manage a portion, knowing if things are going to be, we're going to go overboard not overboard, but like it's going to be a bigger meal in the evening, how to reduce things, and when we reduce things, what do we prioritize in that meal, and kind of all these factors coming into play. And in my opinion, like, it is vitally important to not only, to be able to shift portion sizes around and shift components of those portions around, like protein, fiber, etc., instead of just going like the highest highs to the lowest lows in terms of like meal size, right? And that is an important skill to have. And look, when we get to the point where you are your healthy weight, right, exactly where you want to be, like we can skip a meal every now and then because we've gone overboard. But generally, to stay where we want to be, like, we have to have that understanding. We really have to have that understanding. And I'm not saying during this process we can't do that. We can't skip a meal every now and then because, we did go a bit crazy the night before, and we might not be feeling great and all this kind of stuff. Like, it's a balance, right? We have to do it enough to develop the right understanding, but, we're never going to be perfect. And again, like us men travel, we can't expect to be perfect. So it's a fine line to walk on, and one I feel I've had a few tough conversations with people about it, and I feel it's necessary to attempt to just manage everything, adjust sizes as much as possible. Because look, if we're skipping meals, it's going to be much, much harder when we're only eating twice a day compared to 3 times a day to eat enough protein. And every single guy that comes in is under eating protein. For their body weight, their height, for also the goals that they have. And they'll be lacking a lot of performance, a lot of progress when it comes to going to the gym because they're not eating it enough. So that's something that, in my opinion, is so important. And this 1-2-3 strategy seems to be working really well in terms of holding you accountable, in terms of constantly making you think about your portion sizes in a way that we don't skip meals, and when we have to, what we have to prioritize to, if our portion sizes do look a little bit different. Feel like I went off a bit on a tangent there, and maybe said portion sizes an obscene number of times, so it might start to sound a little bit weird, but it's an interesting topic, and I like talking about it, and I like to try and explain both sides of the argument, and try and help kind of those that maybe haven't thought about it like this before I guess understand it as well as I can. In terms of level 2 then, like, this is where obviously things get more accurate. It's more effort, yes, but it comes with more reward. We really understand and start to understand what foods contain, roughly how many calories contain, roughly how much protein. Knowledge that is so useful going forward for when we are going to live life and we're going to stop tracking our calories, and we're just going to try and maintain where we are, and we feel really happy, and we don't want to let things go backwards again, you know? So unfortunately, I realised that shortly into going over level 2, an alarm went off on my phone, and I stopped it on my watch. I carried on talking, and it stopped the video, and I didn't even think about it. So I spoke for about 25 minutes on level 2, the slightly more advanced tracking, and the way we do it, best practices to help us when we can't be as accurate, when we're not 100% sure, when we need to estimate. And it carried on recording because I was recording it on my laptop for the podcast, for a podcast version, but it stopped the video. So I don't have the second part on this YouTube. I will make a separate video at some point soon, going into level 2. However, if you would like, I will drop the link to the podcast in the description below, and you can go ahead and listen to the level 2 description over on there. All right, apologies, but I will make an even better video, more in depth, more clearly, kind of explaining it, even more concise, and I will post it on my Instagram when it goes live. But apologies if you were excited to get into level 2, but I will make sure it happens.